Lebanon, from the crest of Armana, the heights of Samir, the summit of Hermon, from the lion's den and the leopard-haunted hills. You've stolen my heart, my sister, my bride, with one glance of your eyes, one jewel of your necklace. Like a lily among the thorns, is my darling among the daughters. Like a lily among the thorns, is my darling among the others. Don't go away, love. Till it wants to arise. Come with me from the Lebanon, from the crest of Armana, the heights of Sanir, the
Hello, my name's Alan Aguirre, and welcome to the Monday night Devotional gathering here at Chameleon Church, Exodus Gathering. This is our social media, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. If you didn't know, be sure to join, like, subscribe, and share our social media. We have resources, books, calendars, planners, posters of trees in Jerusalem. Be sure to go to planetbluemedia.com and get you some. If you'd like to send us an email, info@E2iSeries.com or feedback@E2iSeries.com, and somebody will get to you. On Tuesday mornings at 8:45 a.m. Central at the Chameleon Church, Facebook and YouTube is the Chameleon Church Show. We've been doing it for about 4 years now. Please join us on Tuesday morning. You're watching, like I said, the Exodus Gathering Monday night devotional. Thank you for joining us. Again, my name is Alan Aguirre. I will be your host. For those of you following the traditional Jewish calendar, Shabbat Shalom. Today is your high Sabbath for the Feast of Tabernacles. May you have a blessed Tabernacles and a high Sabbath. For those of you following the new moon visible crescent, tomorrow night will be our high Sabbath, making Wednesday the first day of the Feast of Tabernacles, and Tuesday night, tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Central at the Chameleon Church Facebook page and the Chameleon Church YouTube
What do you want me to call
page.
you?
Hello? Here, let me just mute you. I'm in the middle of an opening dialogue here. As I was saying, tomorrow night will be the high Sabbath of the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread.
You're so
I'm sorry.
away. I don't know what the deal is.
And I've lost my.
It won't be the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Tomorrow night is the high Sabbath of the Feast of Tabernacles, based on the new moon visible crescent. And since it is the end of the Shemitah year, it is instructed in Deuteronomy 31 to read the Torah as a community, as a group, as a gathering. And so starting tomorrow night, for the next 8 nights, we will be reading the Torah. We will start with Deuteronomy chapter 4 and go through Deuteronomy chapter 30. Are you sitting comfortably? Then let us begin. Week 42, Moses, Exodus 2, verse 24. And we have a slide. Look at this. And God heard their groaning. And God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. I figured that since this week's Torah portion, this particular week's Torah portion, introduces us to Moses, and since Moses is our leader through this journey from Exodus to Ingathering, we would do a brief profile on the man taken from The Feast Unlocked, which you can get at planetbluemedia.com. Israel has been living in Egypt for approximately 200 years. There's a new Pharaoh in town, and he doesn't know, respect, or honor Joseph. It seems that this new Pharaoh also doesn't recognize Joseph's contribution to the Egyptian empire and is more concerned with the size of Israel's population, that their numbers may be more than Egypt can manage or control. What if war broke out and Israel decided to join Egypt's enemies, fight against them, and leave? So Pharaoh decided to deal with Israel shrewdly by distressing, oppressing, and tasking them with Egypt's heavy lifting, such as building Pharaoh's store cities. If you recall from week 1, this was prophesied to Abraham about his descendants. In spite of this, Israel continues to multiply and spread across Egypt. This only increased Egypt's anxiety and fear towards Israel, so they enslaved them and were ruthless towards them. The Hebrew midwives were instructed to kill all newborn Israeli males, but out of their fear of God, they disobeyed the Pharaoh's instructions, so that Israel continued to multiply and strengthen. Pharaoh then instructs Egyptians to carry out the task of murder by throwing all Israeli newborn boys into the Nile. Now, a man from the house of Levi went and took as his wife a Levite woman. The woman conceived and bore a son, and when she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him 3 months. Did you notice that Moses was a Levite of a pure Levitical line? But of course. The Hebrew midwives have been instructed to murder males at birth. They fear God over Pharaoh and disobey the Egyptians' edicts. Pharaoh then instructs all male Israelites to be thrown into the Nile. This is the climate into which this little Levite boy was born. Moses is put into a basket and into the Nile to hide him. Now, the daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe at the river, while her young women walked beside the river. She saw the basket among the reeds and sent her servant women, and she took. When she opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the baby was crying. She took pity on him and said, "This is one of the Hebrews' children." Moses' sister Miriam had been watching the basket, and when she saw Pharaoh's daughter take the basket with the crying baby, she asked if she should go and call on a Hebrew nurse to nurse the child for her. With the Egyptian princess's permission, Miriam goes and gets her mother. They were instructed to take the child and nurse it, and were paid to do so. In verse 10, when the child grew up, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She named him Moses because, she said, "I drew him out of the water." Moses will be raised in Pharaoh's family and in Egypt's court. He will have the best education of the world has to offer and will lack nothing. He will also have power as a favored son of Egypt. 1,500 years later, a disciple of Jesus, Stephen, will say this about Moses. "And Moses was instructed in all the wisdom of the Egyptians, and he was mighty in his words and deeds." Now, I had a thought when I put that slide together. Nothing in the Old Testament says that about Moses anywhere. I'm wondering what sort of additional text or spiritual revelation did Stephen have in order to come to that conclusion, in order to be able to say that on his deathbed, essentially, because he was, I think, being stoned at the time. Interesting, right? It is said that Moses was raised up as a general of Egypt's armies at the suggestion of Egypt's oracles and prophets to counter the strained relations with Ethiopia. Moses is victorious against Ethiopia and becomes a celebrated war hero, turning Egyptian leaders against him out of fear. Moses is a foreigner, a Hebrew. Moses represents Israel, who are numerous. Moses has become very powerful. Moses has shown military innovation that might introduce new customs. Envy and fear turns Egypt against Moses. Josephus is the source for that. And he is he's a renowned historian from way back, I don't know first, 2nd century. Then Moses makes a mistake. He kills an Egyptian. If the account of Josephus is true, Pharaoh now has his reason to get rid of Moses. When Pharaoh hears that Moses has murdered a fellow Egyptian, Pharaoh wants Moses dead. Moses flees Egypt through the desert to Midian, where he immediately makes a name for himself by stopping some shepherds that were bullying the 7 daughters of the Midian priests. When they, the 7 daughters, came home to their father Reuel, he said, "How is it that you have come home so soon today?" They said, "An Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds, and even drew water for us, and watered the flock." He said to his daughters, "Then where is he? Why have you left the man? Call him that he may eat. Did you notice? Moses was an Egyptian. He wasn't a Hebrew. He was an Egyptian. He looked like an Egyptian, walked like an Egyptian, wore the makeup of an Egyptian, the hairstyles of an Egyptian, the clothing of an Egyptian, his mannerisms, even his accent. He was an Egyptian. He was a son of the queen to be, the Pharaoh's daughter's son. 2 verses later, Moses is married to Reuel's daughter, Zipporah, and they have a son named Gershom. There's an hypothesis that Moses lived in the 18th dynasty when 2 to 3 pharaohs ruled regionally at the same time. It suggests that a people called the Hyksos lived in the northern delta region and are described as shepherd kings, whom the Egyptians considered foreigners. This hypothesis suggests that these are the descendants of Joseph, who lived there with royal status because of Joseph's good standing in Egypt during the 7-year famine. An inscription of Queen Hatshepsut, I always get these wrong when their camera's on, Pharaoh's daughter, refers to the Hyksos people being driven out of this northern delta. So we have a connection now with these people and Pharaoh's daughter, the queen, when she's queen, Hatshepsut. Man, that's a rough one. Egyptian records suggest a warrior people, barbarians, that lived in the Northland among these shepherd kings were driven out by Egypt due to a situation that threatened what could be the Hebrews. Because they were shepherds, they were unable to defend themselves. This weakness, though their number was great, was the ideal combination for an Egyptian workforce, thus the slavery of Israel and Egypt's protection of them. In this 18th dynasty hypothesis, Pharaoh's daughter is possibly the daughter of Pharaoh Thutmose I, who had no male heir. Her name was Nephuri, Hatshepsut. There are several statues of Nephuri holding a male child who is wearing ornaments indicating royalty and or the heir to the Egyptian throne. Is the child she's holding named Senmut, the Hebrew Levite Moses? Did she adopt this Israeli boy born into slavery because her father had no heir, positioning herself for future rule? The name Senmut means mother's brother, meaning that through her, Senmut had the right to inherit the throne, since Nephuri bore the right but couldn't become Pharaoh herself. It also suggests that they had a romantic relationship. History tells us that she would eventually become queen. If this Senmut is indeed Moses, what happens to him in Egyptology? Any basic Google search, image search for these names will depict and show you this information. It is probably that Senmut abused his power and that at a particular point in the reign of Hatshepsut, he fell into disgrace, as demonstrated by the damage done to most of his monuments. The Cairo Museum Masterpieces of Egyptian Art, that's your source right there. There are depictions of this particular Senmut in his as an adult, and those big Egyptian faces, and there's likenesses of this Senmut with his nose broken off, which would be an indication of losing favor and falling into disgrace, as demonstrated by the damage done to most of his monuments. There are some likenesses of Senmut that you can see, that you can find online, that show that he has a different nose than most of the other ones, and that's because he had a Semite type of nose. Now, this is exactly what happened to Moses. He lost favor. As heir to the throne, murdering a fellow Egyptian, then escaping Egypt, this would have been a disgrace from an Egyptian perspective. According to Egyptian tradition, everything, monuments, statues, scrolls, etc., would have been destroyed. You would have been erased from history. Here's a very interesting fact that I never stopped to consider before. History tells us that Thutmose IV, also known as Amenhotep III, the pharaoh that succeeded Thutmose I, was not a firstborn son. Whoever the Pharaoh of the Exodus account was, he survives the angel of death during the first Passover. Now, this could be because of the fact that he was not a firstborn son, or because the Exodus account states that the destroyer would begin with Pharaoh's firstborn. Or does the Exodus account state that the destroyer would begin with Pharaoh's firstborn because Pharaoh himself wasn't a firstborn son? Regardless, with that in mind, here are some interesting facts about Thutmose IV, also known as Amenhotep III, the pharaoh from the 18th dynasty that could parallel the pharaoh that Moses was sent to in the Exodus account. Thutmose IV was the second-born son of Amenhotep II. Thutmose IV killed his firstborn brother to take the crown. The dream stela of Thutmose IV, found between the front paws of the Sphinx, was used to legitimize the murder by claiming it was directed by the Sphinx in a dream. King Tutankhamun, yes, that King Tut, an inscription on a statue of a lion dedicated by King Tutankhamun to the temple of Soleb claims Amenhotep III as his father. That makes King Tut, right, who supposedly reigned from the age of 9 until his mysterious death at 18, he was the only heir apparent to the throne, crown prince, that may have co-reigned with his father in his later years. Exodus 11:5, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who sits on his throne. That King Tut, his tomb was found in the Valley of the Kings by Howard Carter, was said to be a cursed tomb. His burial looks rushed and in a tomb generally too small and not designed for a reigning pharaoh's burial. Is King Tut, who was paralyzed or his feet were all messed up, was that the pharaoh's son that was firstborn son that was killed with the angel of death? Is Thutmose IV the pharaoh that perished with his armies while pursuing Moses into the sea? Is King Tutankhamun the firstborn son of Pharaoh Thutmose IV, the firstborn son of Pharaoh struck dead by the angel of death in Exodus 12? And the Lord said to Moses in Midian, "Go back to Egypt, for all the men who were seeking your life are dead." Thutmose III died around 1450, and his son Amenhotep II ascended the throne. If the chronology proposed in this, proposed in this hypothesis is correct, Moses returned to Egypt around 1446 BC, roughly 400 years into the reign of Amenhotep II. Again, if this hypothesis has any merit, how were Moses and Aaron able to gain an audience with this new pharaoh? Moses, Senmut, Thutmose II, the adopted son of Hatshepsut and living heir to the throne, was Pharaoh's step-uncle. He was the step-uncle to the Pharaoh. Moreover, the man Moses was very great in the land of Egypt, in the sight of Pharaoh's servants and in the sight of the people. By faith, Moses, when he was born, was hidden for 3 months by his parents because they saw that the child was beautiful and they were not afraid of the king's edict. By faith, Moses, when he was grown up, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to be mistreated with the people of God than to enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. He considered abuse suffered on behalf of the Messiah greater wealth than the treasures of Egypt, for he was looking to the reward. By faith he left Egypt, not being afraid of the anger of the king, Pharaoh, for he endured as seeing him who is invisible. By faith he kept the Passover and sprinkled the blood so that the destroyer of the firstborn might not touch them, Israel. I included this information because I want to paint a picture of this man, this Levite, this prophet that precedes the Messiah Jesus, this Egyptian noble, this warrior, this Nephilim killer. This is the man that delivers Israel from Egypt, that has been given the task to fashion Israel from a people into a nation of kings and priests unto Adonai. This is who God calls the humblest man that ever walked the face of the earth, the man that God chose to speak to face, like you speak to a man. The man that God showed his physical manifestation to and lived to tell about it. The man whose body Lucifer argued over. This is the man, the Levitical priest, who was personally given God's instruction on how you and I are to live here on this earth in the way that proves to everyone that we are truly his. Be right back. Hello.
It's Monday.
How are you? You good? I was trying a new approach. I was trying a new approach, and you guys didn't like it.
Good evening, Alan.
Hi.
I don't know about the new approach, but it's different.
I'm trying to be more respectable.
Oh, you're respectable. You don't have to try to be. We enjoy you the way you are.
Man, those Egyptian word names are just like.
Oh, they are. They are. I mean, I was reading a whole book that Ron Wyatt's wife put together about this very subject of who Moses is, and there's all kinds of pictures, and I'm like, I'm falling asleep, because I'm like going past words I can't even say, but you get the picture, and the thing is that God is so good that He put Moses, He protected him. Yeah. And He put him in with the Pharaoh's daughter. He protected him again when the Pharaoh wanted to kill him. And He educated him in the best place in the world at that time. Yeah. And He took all that education and He used it for God. And I thought that was really, because He could have gone either way. Everybody has that choice. Yeah. But He chose to be a Hebrew, to be a Levite, and to lead His people out, and to watch all of those enemies behind Him just be crushed in the sea. That had to be one kind of awesome sight, and to what great lengths God went to get His people out through this particular. I mean, it just blows me away.
It's crazy when you think about it. I mean, you got Moses coming out of Egypt. You got Joseph coming out of Egypt. You got Jesus coming out of Egypt. Man, it's a trip.
It was a very big trip. But it's all there for us because we come out of Egypt as well.
Right.
So
Right. We all
that's
come out of our version of an Egypt.
yeah. So anyway, I thought this was a very poignant and a really good. They're all good,
Oh,
obviously, but
thanks.
this one just blew me away because, like I said, I was just reading about all that Egyptian stuff, and it's just like when you start reading about the logistics of how this all, there's Pharaoh here, Pharaoh there, this guy there doing. I mean, the logistics that God put together to have this occur is just mind blowing, absolutely mind blowing.
It really
But
is.
yeah, thank you for putting that down so well. Really good.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you. A lot of times we read the Bible, we read this stuff, and it's just kind of like a story. But when you break it down into like real people and real situations and real emotions and real life scenarios, just like whatever you went through the last 5 days, went to the store, didn't go to the store, car didn't start or whatever, it's those little things that make these people real that I think I want to know about it. It's important to me. The more I know about the workings of a human or a person, like a Moses, like a Joshua, Joshua would sneak into the tent of meeting and stay inside there all night long. I mean, he's in the glory. He's in the glory of the Lord. If the more I know about these people, the more I can fashion my life after them. Does that make sense? The more I know about the disciples, the more I know about Jesus, the more I can fashion my life after these people, which is a lot of us, again, forget that is the goal. And I've mentioned, I'm a voyeur of sorts as a songwriter and all that when it comes to human social behavior and all that. Man, the more I know, I think is the more information I have regarding those type of things, I think the more it can help me meet my goals of wanting to becoming more like Jesus. So, like, what was going on with Peter that his shadow could heal? I want to know about that.
That's awesome.
What was going on with Philip that he was being transported? Things like that.
And how did Stephen know? I mean, as he's being stoned, is he seeing, is he having a vision about Moses at that time because you're right, that's not in the scripture anywhere. So as he's heading to glory, being stoned, he has this vision about Moses. And I'm like, way in that's way past Moses' time and into the future.
Yeah.
And there he is saying what he said. And it's just like, what, these guys, man, they knew this stuff.
They knew stuff.
Yeah, that we can't even fathom.
Right.
A lot of it was burned during the, Constantine and that whole 9 yards of crap. But
I think that plays into it.
Yeah. And it's just like, how do we know? How do we know that? How do we catch that? How do we catch that vision? How do we be so obedient that we can walk and our shadow heals people, or we can raise the dead, or, do all the things that the New Testament people did readily. And it's just like, so we keep reading and we keep finding out, how did these people operate? How did Moses operate? He was a human like we were, but, he followed God so closely. Did he make mistakes? Yeah, God didn't say that we're not going to make mistakes, but he was just walking with God. And how do we walk closer to God other than to look at these people and see how they walked closely with God? I mean, I can't imagine Stephen being stoned as Paul's there standing there with everybody's cloaks watching him. And then how badly Paul must have felt after the fact.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's just so many things that, awesome.
Yeah. I agree with you. It's not far-fetched that he had a revelation at the moment, because he was preaching to them. He was witnessing the gospel to them at such a level of depth and conviction to the people that crucified Jesus. He's witnessing to them about the guy they murdered as Messiah, and he's using the lineage. Man. Yeah. Cool stuff. Oh, we heard from Allison. She's good. She's just been busy with stuff. So she's good. Good to hear. Thank you, Alyssa, for getting that info. So I think Moses is applicable. Well, considering the theme of the book is the Exodus. He's a prophet unto Moses. Jesus is a prophet unto Moses. It's the song of Moses that's being sung in the throne room. He is the oracle that put it down on paper as the scribe, the Torah, the oral, and all that. He saw God. Lucifer argued over his body. He claimed rights to his body when it came to Michael. What's that about? We see that in Jude. Good stuff. Anybody have any insights on this stuff? You know, how does it? What's it look like for you, or how can you apply it, or did you learn something new?
Well, I think for me, something dawned on me when I was reading this again. And I think maybe it's for people that were raised in the church, or churchianity. I think the anti-Torah thing that goes on, I don't think people in general, Christianity, give Moses a lot of cred or due. And like you say, it's just amazing. Like, who else had the devil argue over his body, and all the things that I really appreciate it that you brought out in the, people, I don't know, I don't get it, but people kind of, there's almost an anti-Moses sentiment, or they just kind of dismiss it. I don't know what's going on there, but you think about what a key figure he is.
Yeah.
And it's him and Elijah that appear on the Mount of Transfiguration. And I think Stephen had an epiphany because, when they started throwing the rocks was when he said he could see into heaven at that moment. And I think, but I also think there was literature out there, like, we've lost the assumption of Moses. And so who knows what else was in that content. And we learn things about Moses. We don't know if they're true or not, but we learn about them in Yasher and Jubilees and stuff like that. So I think there probably was other sources out there.
When you think about Moses was demonized by the church in the 4th century.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't really know why Moses gets that trip.
Because the law came through him. Because every time Moses is mentioned, it represents the Torah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a bummer because,
Yeah,
the compliment that the Father describes him as the most humble man who ever lived.
Yeah, and not just that. I showed you my personage, and you lived.
Yeah.
He didn't, that didn't happen with Abraham. He put Abraham to sleep. He put Abram to sleep before he showed up.
Enoch and Elijah had to leave this world before they were taken to his presence in that fashion.
The closest Abraham got, were the 3 guys came up to him.
Yeah. And so it's like, I really appreciate it. I'm sorry, but I think Moses is somebody for any Bible believer to emulate. And I think Yeshua would agree. Yeshua clearly had high regard for Moses. And that in itself is just, man, can you imagine? That's heavy.
It is. It's he quotes Moses. It's the song of Moses that is sung in the throne room, not the song of Paul, not the song of Jesus,
not even the song of David.
Yeah,
Mr. Worship himself. I mean,
yeah, there's something going on there.
Absolutely, and I think, you think about even his track record. Okay, on the way to Egypt, he almost died because he didn't circumcise his sons, and he struck the rock.
He had an issue.
Other than that, it's a pretty solid track record.
Yeah. I think he might. I guess I get the impression that he had an issue with circumcision for some reason, because there was no circumcision in the desert.
Well, and I'm not sure how obedient Israel was when they were in slavery. So the whole concept might have been entirely foreign by that point, because
Right.
we see that they all had to, renew for the covenant and prepare.
At Gilgal.
Yeah.
But it was the sons of the son of promise, and it was under Joshua.
Yeah.
So there's something there.
Yeah, and I just, like I said, it really impressed me that not just who the man is, but it also baffles me a bit on why he doesn't get more due by people of the word.
Yeah. Well,
because in the Bible itself, it's there.
Yeah. I think it's because he was demonized he's been demonized for so long. He was demonized the entirety of Protestantism.
Yeah.
So that's
terrible.
That's a stigma. That's a hard stigma to circumcise. Because circumcision was the stigma of Egypt.
Yeah,
we need to be circumcised from the stigma of Catholicism.
Absolutely. And I don't think we have an appreciation of the intense obedience and faithfulness of that man.
Yeah.
I mean, you point to me somebody who was more obedient and more persistent and more of an overcomer and more faithful in all that he did. It's pretty hard.
Yeah. I love how God tells them, those people of yours, wow, wait, they're not my people. They're your people. You're the one that put me in this role.
Yeah.
I was thinking about the Keith Green song. And he'll take care of the rest. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
And he goes, hey, Mo, what you doing? Going down south, I'll be saying every word that comes out of your mouth. That's not biblically correct. Aaron was the mouthpiece.
Yeah.
Christians and their theology and their music.
Yeah. Yeah, but and I think like you would do a lot worse than to try and emulate Yeshua and Moses.
Yeah.
In your life.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I also think, I don't know, it just kind of this week kind of renewed my I don't know what the enthrallment with the Torah and with Moses' life and story.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you know about the whole ordeal of the water thing in the ancient Near East?
What aspect?
So the water in the ancient Near East was considered to be the nexus to the underworld. And so a lot of ordeals and judgment was done by water. If you survived a trial by water, it was a sign from the gods and from the heavens that, you were favored and you were justified and right.
Like drinking the ash.
Yeah, and so that's why it had such a tremendous impact, Jonah, and all that stuff, because and there's actually in in Ur and all those places, they would throw women or people into the water, and if they didn't drown, it was a sign that they were justified. And if they drowned and went to the world of the dead, it was a sign that they were guilty. So for the Egyptians, for Moses, his name to be drawn out of the water, I mean, that would have been huge in terms of lineage and cred, that he was put in the basket and basically the gods endorsed him, and the daughter of Pharaoh found him and drew him out of the water. I mean, that from the get-go, he's a guy that's walking around with incredible, powerful cred. Yeah.
No, I wasn't aware of that. Thank you for sharing that. Very cool. Is that Kim in the background?
Sorry, I got a bad connection.
I do, or you do?
I think I do. I just hit a pocket. I think I just got home, but
I was
I
just
missed
asking
the
if that
last
was
thing
your
you
lovely
said.
wife in the background.
It was.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
Alan says hello. She's dealing with a barking dog and
I see it.
excited goats. So yeah, no, but it's really there's a lot I think that we don't get that's going on there for sure. So
Cool. Well, we're going to be reading a lot of Moses this week coming up.
yeah, absolutely.
Anybody else? YouTube comment, same test as the medieval witch trials. Survival meant guilty, death meant innocence, but the person is still dead. Yeah. No, we're not reading all 5 books. So the question is, are we reading all 5 books? No. So it was the reading of the Torah during Tabernacles at the end of Sukkot, which will begin tomorrow night. So Deuteronomy 4 through 30 is the Torah, and that's what we'll be reading. The Torah part of the Torah. Anyone else? Anyone else have anything to share? It's an early night. It's an early night, but hey, we're going to see each other all week long. Tomorrow morning with the Chameleon Church show here at.
You said Deuteronomy 4 through 30?
Jazz.
I'm sorry, I fell asleep. I'm on meds.
No, that's good. That's good. Yeah, I know.
I was listening.
I read all about it. I read all about it. So, so the same way you would watch the Chameleon Church show, whether it's on Facebook or on YouTube, is how you'll watch the Torah reading. We're going to read Deuteronomy 4 through 30 in the next 8 nights, Tuesday through Tuesday, as instructed by Deuteronomy 31.
What time?
8 Central.
Got it.
Cool. And somewhere in the middle of all that, Chris is traveling. Lenny's traveling. I'm traveling coming this weekend. I'll be going to Dallas. So if anybody in Texas wants to meet up, let's figure that out. Other than that, I got to practice. If y'all ain't got nothing more to say, yeehaw. Oh man, that was terrible. Okay, well then, gosh, you guys are doing so good. No more Q&A. You guys are awesome. See you in the morning.